we have four main groups of antihypertensives. Right? We have four main groups of antihypertensives. These four main groups, they include number one, diuretics. Diuretics are those group of drugs, they will decrease the blood volume and they will also decrease the sodium retention. That is number one. Next, we have the second group of antihypertensives, that is sympathoplegics. And the third group of antihypertensives, we have vasodilators. And fourth group of antihypertensives, we have those drugs which will decrease the activity of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So in this way, we have all these particular four groups of antihypertensives. Now, in these four groups, we have subgroups or subclassification of antihypertensives. Now, among all those, first, let me discuss about the diuretics. Right, first let me discuss about the diuretics. Now, always remember the very important electrolyte, that is the sodium. Right, the very important electrolyte, that is sodium. Sodium contributes to hypertension. Now, how does it contribute to hypertension is very important. What does this particular sodium do is, sodium will increase the stiffness of the blood vessel. Alright, will increase the stiffness of the blood vessel. So, when the stiffness of the blood vessel is increased, thereby there is increase in the total peripheral resistance. Right, as and when there is increase in the stiffness of the blood vessel, there is increase in the total peripheral resistance. Now, as we have discussed, blood pressure is equal to cardiac output into total peripheral resistance. So, when the total peripheral resistance of the individual is increased, indirectly the blood pressure of the individual also increases. Now, when you give this particular diuretics, right, when you give this particular diuretics, what does this diuretics do? This diuretics will cause natriuresis, right, diuretics will cause natriuresis, that is, they will cause the excretion of the sodium. So once they cause the excretion of the sodium content in the body will be reduced and thereby the stiffness of the blood vessel is reduced and thereby the total peripheral resistance of the individual is also reduced. So very important point is that either you do salt restriction, right, either you do salt restriction, or when the individual takes this particular diuretics, salt restriction and diuretics, they will reverse the effect of this particular sodium. Alright. Now, another important point is, initially the diuretics, they cause sodium and as well as water loss. Right. This particular diuretics, they will cause sodium and as well as water loss initially. Alright. Now, this particular sodium and water loss, that will decrease the cardiac output of the individual, because once there is water loss, what will happen? The total blood volume reduces. When the total blood volume reduces, the stroke volume reduces. When stroke volume reduces, the cardiac output will be reduced. Alright. So, what does this diuretics do now? Diuretics, indirectly, they will decrease the cardiac output of the individual. Right, diuretics, they will decrease the cardiac output of the individual. But later on, see, the decrease in cardiac output by the diuretics is only in the early stages when the individual is taking diuretics. But later on, the cardiac output, it returns to normal. So, initially, they will have decrease in cardiac output and later on, the cardiac output, it becomes normal. Right, later on the cardiac output returns to normal, but there is net sodium deficit. Alright, so what was the diuretics doing? Initially they were causing sodium and as well as water loss, but as the time progresses, the cardiac output will be normal, but the sodium which has been lost initially, that won't be returned back. So there is a net sodium loss. Alright, so there is a net sodium loss. So once there is a net sodium loss, that will decrease the stiffness of the blood vessel, and thereby they will decrease the total peripheral resistance of an individual. Now, we have various classes of diuretics, like we have loop diuretics, we have thiazide diuretics, we have potassium-sparing diuretics, we have carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, and we have osmotic diuretics. Now, among all these groups of diuretics, remember, thiazides are the first line drugs in hypertension. This is a very, very important point. Thiazides. Alright. Thiazides, they are the first line drugs in hypertension. Now, what are the drugs in this particular thiazide group of diuretics? This thiazide group of diuretics, they include hydrochlorothiazide, they include chlorthalidone, they include bendroflumethiazide, and as well as indapamide. So these are the drugs in this thiazide group of diuretics, and remember, thiazides, they are considered as the first line diuretics or first line antihypertensives among the diuretic group. So if you see this particular thiazides, whenever you are giving as a part of the treatment in hypertension, they always should be used at low doses. Right? They always should be used at low doses. Why? Because when you increase the dose of thiazides, right? When you increase the dose of thiazides, their antihypertensive effect of thiazides will not increase. Right? Even though you increase the dose, the antihypertensive effect will not increase, but adverse effects will tend to increase. So when you increase the dose, the adverse effects of the thiazide diuretics will increase. Now what will be the adverse effects of this particular thiazide diuretics? The adverse effects include like hyperuricemia, like hyperglycemia, like hypokalemia. So all these adverse effects of the thiazide diuretics will increase, but antihypertensive effect of the thiazides will not increase if we increase the dose of thiazide diuretics. So that is the reason why they should be used only in low doses. Now, among all the list of thiazide diuretics whichever I have said, remember which is the longer acting and more potent hydrochlorothiazide is your indapamide. So indapamide, right, it is longer acting and as well as more potent hydrochlorothiazide. So this point is a very, very important point. Next, the other important point is it is effective as an antihypertensive at lower doses, whereas it is effective as an antihypertensive at lower doses than those required for the diuretic effect. Why? Due to its direct vasodilatory action. So remember, indapamide at lower doses, it is used as antihypertensive. Next, the other important point about your indapamide is it also produces very less metabolic adverse effects. Right? Indapamide, it will produce very less metabolic adverse effects compared to that of other thiazide diuretics. Now, what are those adverse effects? Like you take hypokalemia, you take hyperglycemia, you take hyperuricemia. These metabolic adverse effects caused by indapamide is very less compared to that of the other thiazide diuretics. Now, because it causes less amount of hyperglycemia, this can be used as an antihypertensive in diabetic patients, whereas other thiazide diuretics, they are contraindicated in diabetic patients because they will cause hyperglycemia. So that is about the usage of thiazide diuretics in the treatment of hypertension. Now, the other group of diuretics what we use in the treatment of hypertension is your loop diuretics. is your loop diuretics. Now, so if you take this particular loop diuretics, they include Furosemide, Torsemide, Bumetanide, and as well as Indapamide. So these are the loop diuretics. But remember a very important point. This particular loop diuretics, they are not indicated, right? They are not indicated in mild or moderate hypertension, right? They are not indicated in mild or moderate hypertension. Why? Because these loop diuretics, they will cause a very severe diuresis, because these loop diuretics, they are high ceiling diuretics. Alright, so loop diuretics, they cause a brisk diuresis. Because it causes brisk diuresis, right, because it will cause brisk diuresis, that will lead to severe reduction, right, that will lead to severe reduction in the blood volume, right, that will lead to severe reduction in the blood volume. And not only that, this particular loop diuretics, they will also cause electrolyte disturbances, right, they will also cause electrolyte disturbances or electrolyte imbalance. So this is a very important point. Loop diuretics, they are not indicated either in your mild or moderate hypertension, because whenever we use this particular loop diuretics, they will cause brisk diuresis, and thereby there is very severe reduction in the blood volume of the individual. And not only that, these loop diuretics, they will also cause electrolyte disturbances. So now in which type of hypertension these loop diuretics are indicated? Loop diuretics, they are indicated in case of severe hypertension with congestive heart failure and as well as renal dysfunction. Alright, so this loop diuretics, they are indicated in severe hypertension with congestive heart failure and as well as renal dysfunction. So when there is severe hypertension in a patient with renal dysfunction, you give loop diuretics. A patient is having a very high blood pressure, associated with that he is also having congestive heart failure, then loop diuretics are indicated. Alright, so now we have an important drug called as indapamide, right? We have an important drug called as indapamide. So if you take this particular indapamide, it can be used in patients of gout. Alright, this can be used in patients of gout with hypertension. Why? Because it will inhibit the reabsorption of uric acid in the nephron. So remember this point. Among these loop diuretics, the one which can be used as antihypertensive in a patient with gouty arthritis is your indapamide. Why? Because it will inhibit the reabsorption of uric acid in the nephron. Whereas you take the other loop diuretics or you take other thiazide diuretics, they will cause hyperuricemia. The important MCQ point about your indapamide is it will inhibit the reabsorption of uric acid, and that is the reason why they can be used as antihypertensive in a patient with gout. So we have the another group of diuretics which are used in the treatment of hypertension, that is a potassium-sparing diuretics. Alright, so that is potassium-sparing diuretics. So if you take this potassium-sparing diuretics, they include amiloride, triamterene, spironolactone, and as well as eplerenone. But remember, they are used always in combination, right? They are used always in combination with loop diuretics or the thiazide diuretics. Alright, they are used in combination with the loop diuretics or the thiazide diuretics. Now, why they are used in combination? Because this either you take thiazide diuretics or you will take loop diuretics, they will cause very severe hypokalemia. That is, hypokalemia is one of the adverse effects with this loop diuretics or thiazide diuretics. Now, in order to decrease that particular hypokalemia, if we add associated potassium sparing diuretics, the hypokalemia will be reverted. So that is the reason why this potassium sparing diuretics, they are used in combination with the loop diuretics or thiazide diuretics. So this is the discussion about the diuretics as antihypertensives. So the first line diuretic which is used as an antihypertensive will be thiazide diuretic, and we take the loop diuretic. They are not used in mild or moderate hypertension, they are used in severe hypertension associated with congestive heart failure or renal dysfunction. And the potassium sparing diuretics, they are used in combination with either loop diuretic or thiazide diuretics.